Kamala Harris, Breaking Barriers, Shaping History. Every once in a generation, a leader emerges whose story inspires not only a nation, but the world. Kamala Harris's journey, from the daughter of immigrants in Oakland, California, to becoming the first woman, the first Black American, and the first South Asian American Vice President of the United States, is such a story. This book is more than a biography. It is also a companion for you as you improve your English listening and speaking skills. As you hear these words, you are practicing pronunciation, rhythm, and tone. Simply by following Kamala's story in English, you are training your ear and sharpening your ability to understand and communicate. Kamala's life represents resilience, courage, and the power of never giving up. And as you listen, remember, each chapter is also a lesson in language. Every sentence you repeat, every phrase you understand, makes you a stronger English speaker. By the end of this journey, you will not only know the inspiring story of Kamala Harris, but you will also feel more confident in your English communication. Because hearing real stories in English is one of the fastest ways to improve fluency. So let's begin. A journey of history, hope, and language learning. As you listen to this story in English, you are not only learning about Kamala Harris, but also improving your listening, pronunciation, and fluency step by step. Chapter 2. The Education of Kamala Harris. By the time she was a young girl, Kamala's path was already forming. From her mother, she inherited determination, from her father, intellectual rigor, and from her environment, a deep sense of justice. These roots, Indian and Jamaican, immigrant and activist, gave rise to a future leader who would one day break barriers at the highest levels of American democracy. Growing up, Kamala lived at the intersection of cultures, Indian festivals at home, Jamaican traditions from her father, and the urgency of American activism outside. This dual identity shaped her resilience and perspective. She witnessed inequality in Oakland and the barriers her mother faced in science. At the same time, she absorbed pride, discipline, and the conviction that justice required action. When her parents separated, Shamala raised Kamala and her younger sister Maya largely on her own. She insisted they take pride in both their Black and Indian heritage, while preparing them for a society that would often see them only as Black women. It is not enough to complain, you must act, Shamala taught, a lesson that became Kamala's compass. Their home in Oakland reflected this blend of intellect and activism. Books and debates filled the rooms, and protests were a family activity. Kamala's earliest memories included being carried through marches, absorbing chants for justice before she could read. Her parents, Shamala Gopalan and Donald Harris, had each crossed oceans for education. Shamala from Chennai, India, studied nutrition and endocrinology at Berkeley, later dedicating her career to breast cancer research. Donald from Jamaica earned a PhD in economics and became a Stanford professor. Both were brilliant scholars but also activists, deeply engaged in the civil rights struggles of the era. Oakland, in the 1960s, pulsed with protest and possibility. Civil rights marches and anti-war rallies filled the streets. It was in this charged atmosphere that Kamala Devi Harris was born on October 20th, 1964. Chapter 1. Roots and Heritage. Unlike many classmates aiming for corporate law, Kamala chose prosecution. She believed justice had to be shaped from within the system, not only challenged from outside. Her view was simple. If you're not in the room where decisions are made, you can't influence outcomes. After graduating in 1986, Kamala returned to California for law school at UC Hastings College of the Law. The environment was demanding, but she thrived, driven by resilience and a clear sense of purpose. UC Hastings College of the Law. Howard affirmed her identity. Growing up between cultures, she often straddled Jamaican, Indian, and American worlds. At Howard, she embraced her identity as a Black woman fully. As she later wrote, "You could come here and be young, gifted, and Black. It was a place where you didn't have to explain yourself." She joined Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Incorporated, the oldest Black sorority in America, which gave her a lifelong network of support. She studied political science and economics, joined the debate team, and sharpened her ability to think fast, argue persuasively, and stand her ground. Skills that would later electrify Senate hearings and campaign stages. When the time came to choose a college, Kamala left California for Washington, D.C., enrolling at Howard University, one of the most prestigious historically black colleges and universities. Known as the Mecca, Howard was a place of pride and empowerment. Here, Kamala wasn't the only one in the room. She was surrounded by excellence, mentors, and peers who believed in her potential. Howard University, the Mecca. For Kamala Harris, education was more than classrooms and degrees. It was a proving ground. Each stage gave her new confidence and prepared her to step into spaces where few women of color had ever stood. In 2009, Harris published her book, Smart on Crime, a career prosecutor's plan to make us safer. She argued that safety and fairness were not opposites. True justice required both. She pushed for focusing on prevention and rehabilitation, not just punishment, while still holding serious offenders accountable. Smart on Crime, the philosophy. As DA, she launched Back on Track, a program for first-time nonviolent offenders that offered job training, education, and mentorship in exchange for dismissed charges. Critics called it lenient, but it reduced recidivism and became a national model. In 2003, Harris ran for district attorney of San Francisco, challenging her former boss. Few thought she could win, but her message of being both tough and smart on crime resonated. She became the first woman, first African American, and first South Asian American to hold the office in San Francisco. District Attorney of San Francisco. In 1990, Harris joined the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in Oakland. She handled cases of robbery, assault, and homicide, quickly gaining a reputation for sharp courtroom skills and fearlessness. Opponents underestimated her, but she proved relentless, combining toughness with empathy for victims and their families. Entering the courtroom. Kamala Harris's decision to become a prosecutor surprised many. At a time when prosecutors were often seen as enforcing a system that disproportionately harmed minority communities, she believed real change required being inside that system. Chapter 3. Smart on Crime. Her education gave her more than knowledge. It gave her purpose and set her on the path to becoming not just a lawyer, but a leader. By 1989, law degree in hand, Kamala Harris was ready to step into a profession where women of color were rare. Her education, the activism of childhood, empowerment of Howard, and rigor of Hastings, had prepared her for the challenges ahead. She had the confidence to speak with authority, the pride to stand firm in her identity, and the vision to see law as a tool for justice. Preparing for the fight ahead. As Attorney General, Harris walked a fine line. She launched programs to reduce truancy, invested in re-entry initiatives, and tackled emerging threats like cybercrime and environmental justice. She promoted rehabilitation, but also had to manage California's sprawling law enforcement system. Reform and enforcement. One of her earliest defining battles came during the fallout of the 2008 financial crisis. Millions of Californians faced foreclosure due to reckless banking practices. Harris rejected a weak national settlement, insisting California deserved more. Her gamble worked. She later secured a $25 billion deal for homeowners, the largest such settlement in U.S. history. Families kept their homes, and banks were forced to change their practices. Taking on the mortgage crisis. Skeptics doubted whether a progressive prosecutor could win statewide, but Harris campaigned tirelessly, stressing her record of being smart on crime, reform-minded yet tough when needed. Her message resonated, and in a close race, she was elected, breaking barriers once again. The campaign. In 2010, Kamala Harris made another bold move. She ran for Attorney General of California, the state's top law enforcement officer. The role was massive, overseeing issues from criminal justice to consumer protection and the environment. No woman, no African American, and no South Asian had ever held the position before. Chapter 4: California's Top Cop. By the end of her tenure, Harris had reshaped the office and earned re-election in 2007. She was seen as innovative, pragmatic, and unafraid of controversy. Her policies, reputation, and her book placed her firmly on the national stage as a progressive voice in law enforcement. Rising profile. Her refusal to seek the death penalty in the case of a slain police officer drew heavy criticism, especially from law enforcement. Yet she stood by her principles, believing capital punishment was ineffective and unjust. It was a defining moment that showed she would not bend under pressure. Standing firm. In a 2017 hearing, she pressed Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Russian interference. Her rapid, precise questioning unsettled him. Republican senators interrupted, but Harris stood firm. The exchange went viral, introducing her to millions as sharp, unflinching, and unwilling to be silenced. The Senate is steeped in hierarchy, but Harris quickly made an impact. She joined influential committees including Judiciary, Intelligence, and Homeland Security. Her prosecutorial questioning style drew national attention. Finding her voice. California's diversity and size make it one of the hardest states to campaign in, but Harris had statewide recognition and a reputation for reform. She championed immigrant rights, healthcare expansion, women's equality, and environmental protections. Backed by President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, and other leading Democrats, she won decisively in 2016, becoming only the second Black woman and the first South Asian American ever elected to the U.S. Senate. The campaign. In 2015, with Senator Barbara Boxer retiring, Kamala Harris announced her run for the United States Senate. Having served as San Francisco's DA and California's Attorney General, the Senate was the next step, and a national stage. Chapter 5: The Senator from California. Serving as California's top cop was both a challenge and a launchpad. Harris proved she could lead on the state level, negotiate with Wall Street, and balance reform with enforcement. By the time she left the role, she had become one of the most prominent law enforcement officials in the nation and was poised for the national stage. Breaking barriers, building profile. Re-elected in 2014, Harris's reputation grew. She was praised for her toughness in negotiations, her work on consumer protection, and her ability to navigate complex issues in the country's largest state. She became a rising star in the Democratic Party, mentioned frequently as a future senator or governor. National attention. Some progressives accused her of being too cautious on police accountability and wrongful convictions, while others saw her as a pragmatic reformer constrained by the legal and political limits of her office. These tensions mirrored national debates about how far change could go. On January 21, 2019, Kamala Harris announced her candidacy for President of the United States. That same day, she held her first rally in Oakland, where more than 20,000 supporters gathered. The energy drew comparisons to Barack Obama's early campaigns and positioned Harris as a top contender. Chapter 6: The Presidential Run. Harris's Senate work elevated her national profile. Her sharp exchanges and progressive priorities made her a media fixture. She was frequently mentioned as a future presidential candidate. By the end of her first year, speculation was growing. Could Kamala Harris become the next leader of the Democratic Party? A rising star. She balanced progressive ideals with pragmatic solutions, earning a reputation as both bold and detail-oriented. Environment, addressing climate change and wildfire recovery. Criminal justice, pushing for bail reform, marijuana decriminalization, and re-entry programs. Healthcare, co-sponsoring Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. Immigration, defending DACA, and fighting harsh enforcement policies. Beyond high-profile hearings, Harris focused on issues central to California and her background. Policy priorities. She repeated that approach during the 2018 Supreme Court confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh. Her incisive questions about accountability and independence underscored her role as one of the Senate's toughest interrogators. In the summer of 2020, the United States faced crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, a shaken economy, and nationwide protests for racial justice. Against this backdrop, Democratic nominee Joe Biden prepared to choose his running mate. From the beginning, he pledged it would be a woman. The shortlist included governors, senators, and mayors, but Kamala Harris stood out. Chapter 7. Making History with Joe Biden. The campaign was a test of her resilience. She showed she could command a debate stage and inspire voters with her personal story. Though short-lived, her run positioned her as a national figure and set the stage for the historic role that awaited her in 2020. Lessons learned. On December 3, 2019, Harris suspended her campaign. She cited financial pressures and a lack of resources to continue. While the exit disappointed supporters, she left the race with national recognition and a larger coalition than when she began. Suspension. Momentum was difficult to sustain. On healthcare, she shifted positions, leaving some voters uncertain about her plan. Reports of internal campaign tension and funding struggles began to surface. Rivals with stronger infrastructure gained ground, and Harris struggled to distinguish herself in a crowded field. Challenges. During the first Democratic debate in June 2019, Harris confronted Joe Biden over his past stance on busing and desegregation. She recalled being one of the children bused to school in California. "That little girl was me." The moment electrified the stage, sent her poll numbers soaring, and briefly made her a frontrunner. Debate moment. Her slogan, "For the people," was a phrase she had spoken in every courtroom as a prosecutor. It tied her career in law to her national vision, fighting for justice, equality, and opportunity. She championed progressive policies, Medicare for all, criminal justice reform, climate action, gun control, and immigration protections. Her mix of charisma, intellect, and toughness gave Democrats hope she could take on Donald Trump. The message. The vice presidency is often described as paradoxical, powerful in potential, but shaped by the president's trust. For Harris, it meant both ceremony and substance, representing the U.S. abroad, welcoming leaders at home, and casting tie-breaking votes in a Senate split 50-50. She quickly set a record for the most tie breaks in modern history, underscoring her role in advancing the Biden agenda. A role unlike any other. On January 20, 2021, Kamala Harris raised her right hand on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and became the 49th Vice President of the United States. She was the first woman, the first Black American, and the first South Asian American to hold the office, shattering barriers that had stood for centuries. Chapter 8. Madam Vice President. On January 20, 2021, Kamala Harris took the oath of office as Vice President of the United States. Her hand rested on two Bibles, one belonging to Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American Supreme Court Justice, and another from a close family friend. It was a powerful image, a daughter of immigrants, now one heartbeat from the presidency. On November 7, 2020, after days of counting ballots, major networks projected Biden and Harris as the winners. That evening in Wilmington, Delaware, Harris appeared in suffragist white to deliver her victory speech. She honored the women who had fought for equality and told the nation, "While I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last." Victory and symbolism. During the vice presidential debate with Mike Pence, Harris delivered one of the campaign's defining moments. After repeated interruptions, she calmly asserted, "Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking." The line went viral, symbolizing persistence in the face of dismissal, especially for women who had long experienced being talked over. The 2020 campaign was unlike any before it. With large rallies canceled, Biden and Harris connected with voters through online town halls, virtual fundraisers, and carefully staged in-person events. Harris's charisma and sharp debating skills made her a key asset, especially in reaching women, young voters, and communities of color. Campaigning in a pandemic. Despite their clash during the primary debates, Biden and Harris had built mutual respect. On August 11, 2020, Biden announced her as his vice presidential pick. With that choice, Harris became the first Black woman and the first South Asian American woman nominated for national office by a major party. The announcement electrified Democrats and energized voters across the country. The selection. A legacy still forming. Perhaps more powerful than any single policy is the symbolism of her role. For women, and especially women of color, Harris's presence in the White House is transformative. Her purple inauguration coat, designed by Black and Asian American creators, embodied unity. And her words that day, "I may be the first woman in this office, but I will not be the last," echoed as a promise for the future. Symbolism and representation. Harris countered by reminding Americans that change takes time. Her persistence and visibility kept her at the center of policy and politics. Harris's tenure has been marked by contrast. Abroad, she strengthened alliances in Asia, Africa, and Europe. At home, her tie-breaking votes enabled pandemic relief and infrastructure bills to pass. Yet she faced criticism. Some argued her office struggled with messaging, while her immigration portfolio drew particular scrutiny. Achievements and criticism. These roles carried political risks, but reflected her career-long willingness to take on difficult assignments. COVID-19. Response: encouraging vaccination in underserved communities. Voting rights: advocating federal protections against restrictive state laws. Immigration: addressing root causes of migration from Central America. President Biden tasked her with some of the toughest issues. Early assignments. Kamala Harris has already secured her place in history, but her greatest chapters may still lie ahead. Harris's legacy is about more than policy. It is about resilience, identity, and the widening of what is possible. Her story mirrors America's own. Imperfect, contested, but moving forward through persistence and belief. Legacy in motion. What comes next is uncertain. Harris may one day run for president again, return to the Senate, or take on another national role. Whatever path she chooses, her journey, from Oakland to Howard, from prosecutor to vice president, suggests she will remain a central figure in American public life. Looking ahead. Her legacy also lies in the work she has done: breaking Senate deadlocks, advancing voting rights, supporting relief during the pandemic, and representing America abroad. Some of her assignments, like immigration and voting rights, have proven politically difficult and drawn criticism. Still, her persistence reflects her belief that progress is measured over time, not in quick headlines. Work in action. For many, Harris's presence in the White House is itself transformative. To women, to immigrants, and to Black and South Asian families, her success is validation. Every speech, every diplomatic meeting, every tie-breaking Senate vote reminds Americans that leadership now looks more diverse and inclusive. When she told young girls, "I may be the first, but I will not be the last," she was speaking not just about herself, but about possibility. Symbolism and hope. Kamala Harris's life has been defined by firsts: the first woman, the first Black American, and the first South Asian American to serve as vice president. Each milestone is historic, but together they represent a legacy already reshaping American politics. Yet unlike most legacies written after a career ends, Harris's is still unfolding. Chapter 9: Legacy and Progress. Harris's story as vice president is still unfolding. She faces challenges in a divided America, balancing historic expectations with political realities. Yet her election itself marked a turning point. Kamala Harris has already redefined what is possible, ensuring the halls of power will never look the same again.